Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Friday, July 3rd edition of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. And today I'm joined by my very special guest here. Oh my gosh, John Hyun Ko. I'm so excited to have you on. I came and talk. John, man, how's it going? I was wanting to get you on for a while. I know you're in the chat sometimes. Can you just tell us a little bit about you as well? Because I think maybe some of my viewers don't know a lot about you.
Man, I'm originally from Korea, but and I'm living in Korea now. I've been out here for probably like 16 years now. But I did grow up in the States, so that's why some people get confused when they hear me speak. They're like, "Why that guy? He doesn't have an accent." The reason why is that I grew up in the States. But yeah, I've been started covering MMA. I think around 2014 out here, for some regional sites like Asia MMA and the Fight Nation, and those sites really are not really going right now. But and moved on to other sites in North America, Australia, and just continued it, and then started Kumite TV interviewing fighters, and been going strong for about 3 years now, and just grinding away, man, like most people, and trying to find a spot in this MMA media space that everybody's trying to climb up, I guess.
Yeah, everyone's trying to climb up. You're right. I'm still trying to climb up. Man, I've been doing this for 10 years. So, I mean, it's a grind. That's exactly the word I use when I talk to people. But I'm like, this is just a grind. But I love it, man. I know you love it too, John. I always see you doing like interviews with the fighters, breaking down fights, analyzing fights, news. I know you were at UFC Busan last year, if I'm not mistaken. Was that your first one covering it live for UFC?
No, my first UFC was UFC Seoul when
So
they
that was
had the first
Woodley
show.
and Woodley Kim?
It was Henderson Masvidal.
Henderson Masvidal. Oh yeah, Benson Henderson. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a close fight. I think Benson won, right, by split.
Yeah, it was one of the typical Benson Henderson fights, you know what I mean? But
Yep.
but yeah, that was the first one. Then I went to the one in Shenzhen. I got to watch Zhang Weili finish Andrade in the first round. I was cage side for that. That was insane. That's like historic moment in MMA history, and I was there, so that was pretty cool. And then I went to the one in Busan too. I covered it last December. That was kind of fun.
Awesome, man. So like, what's your goal in the business, man? Because like, you're one of those guys that I've seen for a while now, and like, I see your work a lot, and people I think really respect you now. So like, what's your goal in this business?
Well, I'm glad that people respect me, you know what I mean? But hey, that's one level of it, right? Is getting some respect for what you're doing, and that's great. I guess hopefully I earned it for a lot of people that are following the sport and watch what I do. My goal is to like everybody else is to find a spot, man, and just continue with it. I feel like when you cover the sport, there's no age limit for it. You know what I mean? You could be 10 years old, or you could be 110, and even with covering it, you could be 80 years old and doing it. And that's what I want to do. I want to be like 70 years old and still be kicking strong, and covering the sport. That's the dream.
Yeah. So is this your full-time thing right now, or do you do something else on the side, or?
No, this is not full-time at all. This is the part-time, but I spend so much time on it. But I do have another job. I do like freelance teaching on the side and stuff like that, which allows me to spend as much time and focus on this aspect and grind on it so much. That's why I think I'm able to produce so much content, is because I have a job that I could kind of work at night, and then do this in the morning and during the day. And and I just been going, man, and just going and going. I don't know if I'm gonna stop.
Don't stop, man. Keep going. It's just like you said, it's a grind, but you enjoy it, right? So keep going. All right, let's get into today's topics. So there's a lot to talk about today. Bunch of fight announcements, some news, but biggest news of the day, obviously, woke up this morning. Very, very sad, terrible news here. Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, the father of Khabib Nurmagomedov, the UFC lightweight champion, passes away due to complications from COVID-19. Really sad stuff here. Obviously, our condolences here from me and John, and from everyone at MMAOddsbreaker.com. Just terrible news. A lot of respect, obviously, for Abdulmanap. You see all the support coming in from fighters, fans, media this morning. The guy was well respected around the space, so extremely sad news. I don't think Khabib's commented yet. I obviously expect him to say something today on his social media. John, just devastating news, man. We talked a little bit off air before we started just about COVID-19, the effects it had on humankind, quite frankly. No one's immune to this thing. When you see a guy like this, only 57 years old, really not that old. Looked a bit older than 57, I was surprised when I saw he was 57, John. My dad's also 57. He just still doesn't have fully gray hair like Abdulmanap, but man, I was so sad when I saw this. Like, poor guy. Khabib, geez, like this has got to be tough for him. We'll talk about Khabib and the Gaethje fight if that's even going to go on at this point. But I just want to get your thoughts on Abdulmanap and just his death and what his legacy is to the sport and to Khabib.
First is it just hits you hard because you're fully invested in this sport, and he's one of the one of the grandfathers, you can say, of the sport, because he created this monster in Khabib that we watched and we appreciate so much. And he's the champion right now, the reigning champion, and probably could be the greatest fighter of all time when it's all said and done. And his father was a big part of that, and now he's gone. And the COVID aspect of it is like, this is kind of the norm now. People are going to get COVID, and you've seen fighters now like coming out and saying that I have it. I tested positive and I got to quarantine myself. But I don't feel like the athletes are at that big of a risk. It's the people around the athletes, you know what I mean? The people that are older, the people. I feel like that age range, like from the 50s to 60s to 70s, that's the riskiest age to contract the virus. And his father just was unlucky, man. I feel like it was just unlucky because it's not like they don't have the medical attention and all that stuff. He's very well off, so I'm pretty sure he could have flew him to any hospital he wanted. It's just that he was just unlucky with the virus, and it led to his death. It's very sad, you know what I mean? It can affect you in many different ways, and we're going to talk about it right now and how it's going to affect Khabib. But yeah, man, it sucks really bad.
Okay, so I just want to talk one more thing about Khabib's father here. I see the article here by Dennis Gaethje. I think he's the one who broke the news this morning. Great journalist out of Russia. Always breaking news. I think you know him personally, right? I believe you've probably seen him in one of these events. But from afar,
no, I just know of him though for a while. I've been following him.
One of those grinders out there in Russia. So he got the news this morning. I'm just reading the article here from RT.com. It says Abdulmanap. He had a source that told him this. I'm assuming it's a family member, but Abdulmanap suffered 2 strokes in his heart, a heart attack, and a stroke in the brain. He managed to treat his heart, not his brain. He didn't emerge from the coma. Situation was too serious. It was already too late. The doctors did everything they could. They even tried to connect him with President Putin, but the condition was too serious. So, I mean, this guy was getting the best care, like you said. Just really sad. It's scary, man. Honestly, like, you're right. Like, as far as the world goes, man, like what normal is going forward, normal is going to be very, very much different. I feel like social interactions are going to be very different, going forward. I feel like, the handshake is something that is ingrained in society, but I feel like that's something that could go away as the years go on, John. Like, people are not going to want to be so willing to put their hand out and say, hi, how are you? Because you don't really know this person's been. So it's scary, man. It really is freaky. But like you said, it's going to have more than just effects on, unfortunately, Khabib and all these other fighters. Now, I see Dennis actually just tweeted that he says, this just in, Khabib's teammates Umar Nurmagomedov and Tagir Ulanbekov have both canceled their departure to Fight Island following news of Abdulmanap's death. Unclear if they'll make it or UFC debuts. Those guys are both supposed to fight in Fight Island, both Khabib teammates, I guess. I think Umar's his cousin. I mean, I doubt they're going to fight. Now the question is Khabib going to fight Justin Gaethje in September? That's the rumored date, September 22nd, I think, in Abu Dhabi. I think it's going to be in Abu Dhabi, if I had to guess. That was never like official by any means, but I know that Gamzatov, I think, reported that like last month. I don't know, man. John, it seems pretty soon. 2 months from now, I don't see that fight happening. Now, you'll probably, if I had to guess, see Gaethje defend the interim title instead. In the meantime, I can't see Khabib fighting in September, man. I don't think he'll fight for the rest of the year. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't see him fighting in September. I don't see him fighting, like you said. I agree with you totally. The rest of the year, he's going to be gone. We're not going to see or hear from him until 2021, I believe. And it's rightfully so. I mean, he's dealing with tragedy in his life. You gotta let him, be him and let him be with his family and leave him alone, man. Just let him do what he needs to do.
Yeah.
But this opens the door wide open, right? Wide open for who?
Yeah.
For Conor.
Dude, I was just gonna say the same thing. As crazy as it sounds, Khabib's the guy who would actually vacate the title, I think, because family reasons, I'm going to vacate my belt. And who would say that that's a mistake? Everyone will respect that decision. So I think there's a chance that could happen. And then you could see Conor slide in and fight Gaethje for the actually not just the interim belt, but the new title. I'm not saying Khabib's definitely going to vacate the belt, but I feel like, he's already talked about retirement, John. He said, I think 2 more fights, right? He wanted the fight with Gaethje, and then I guess the Conor rematch was the plan, or maybe GSP. I know they've talked about that fight obviously many times. I do think you're right, John. I think Conor probably slides in here now. It's crazy. What a crazy sport this is, eh? Every day it changes. Something crazy happens, and fights change, and news changes. This is a speculation for me and John. We have no idea what Khabib's going to do, but I think it's fair to say he won't fight before the end of the year. And I think it's fair to say that I'm sure he's highly considering just vacating the belt right now and just to be with his family. Because, if you're Khabib, your father just died from COVID-19. Do you really want to be traveling internationally and putting yourself and the rest of your family at risk, John? I just don't see that happening. He's already rich too, by the way. I mean, Khabib, the article came out. I don't know if you saw that from Forbes. He made $16.5 million last year. So, he doesn't really even need the money right now.
Yeah, it's crazy money, and it's like if his paranoia level was anywhere the paranoia level of every other fighter, now it's 100 times, worse. His paranoia level of contracting the virus now. So I doubt he's gonna go anywhere, outside his country and risk that, because he's got kids, he's got a family, he's got probably his mom, his aunts and uncles. They're all probably up in age also. So I don't see it happening. And like you said, he could vacate it. The reason why is maybe he just doesn't want to deal with the UFC. He doesn't want to deal with the media. He doesn't want to deal with anything now, and just says, hey, and I'm pretty sure the UFC will, they'll comply with him and say, hey, do what you need to do, of course. And when you want to come back, you come back and fight whoever you want to fight if you come back. And going back to the the door being wide open, and it's only one person that's going to walk through it, and it's Conor, man. And it is crazy, the twists and turns this year.
It's crazy. Every day is different. I wake up thinking, okay, this fight's going to happen tomorrow, and then some other fight's happening. I just saw Glenn Cruz from MMA Fighting just tweeted that Anderson Dos Santos tested positive. He's supposed to fight on Fight Island Card 2. He just tested positive. He was supposed to fight Jack Shore. We're going to talk about that fight later on. That fight's not happening now. The good thing,
just interviewed Jack Shore.
Really? Wow. He just tested positive, dude.
Exactly.
The good thing is, though, that they caught it. They caught it before he went to Fight Island. So the testing, I guess, is working in a way. Listen, people are going to test positive, like Dana White talked about. You look at every other sport, John. I'm not sure how familiar you are with North American sports like MLB and NFL, NBA, NHL. There's a lot of players now testing positive. They're testing everyone. These sports are coming back. KBO, I think that's the big sport over there, if I'm not mistaken. Do they test guys on the regular? Has there been any positive tests there for the baseball league?
I haven't seen anything in the news, but I do follow some of the stuff because I do have the ESPN app. So, you get all the sports, even though you don't follow it. Mm-hmm. And I saw something in when they had the quarantine bubble in Orlando, and they had all the, what was the MLS players? They all tested positive too, and they were all quarantined, which was kind of crazy. Yeah. So yeah, man, it's just popping up all over the place, man. It's just, you can't escape it. It's going to happen. And, and you just saw Ungla in Song. He just tested positive, and he trained.
I saw something about him this morning. I didn't read it though. I was too busy with the Khabib thing. But wow, that's
he tested positive yesterday, and he released it on social media. He trains at Sanford MMA with Gilbert Burns, with Henry Hoof, with all those guys in there. I wonder if that, because I know Gilbert Burns is already in Vegas getting tested, so I wonder if that will have an impact on his results, man. We're this next 24 hours, we will figure out if Gilbert Burns will test positive. That could be a possibility. I'm not, I don't want to jinx anything, but that could be a possibility because he's training.
For sure, that's speculation, but imagine that happens. Mm-hmm. Masvidal steps in to fight for the belt on 1 week's notice. Oh, God, this sport, dude, it's crazy. But I love it, though. I love the craziness, man. That's what makes me addicted to it, Yeah, it's really unfortunate, though, about all these positive tests. And obviously, like I said, the Khabib's father passing away is just really sad. Quickly, Brendan Schaub, I got to mention him, too. I know a lot of people don't like Brendan Schaub, but he tested positive, too. There were some rumors out there this week saying that, he didn't do a show or whatever, and this is a guy that I think openly mocked the coronavirus on his podcast and basically said, this isn't real or something. It's just not as severe as people are making out to be. Then he tested positive. That's almost like Rudy Gobert in the NBA. He was the guy saying, was rubbing the microphone with his hand saying, oh, there's no such thing as this. and then he tested positive the next day, and the NBA basically shut down after that. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, even though like I'm not the biggest like Schaub homer by any means, he's actually a decent guy. I met him in person, UFC 165 when he fought Matt Mitchell. So I had interviewed him then, and he was cool. So it's obviously upsetting to hear that, but I think from what he said, he doesn't really feel much. So that's the crazy thing about this, though, because it's like a lot of people are asymptomatic, right? Like, who knows? Maybe I have it. Maybe you do too, John. I haven't got tested. I felt good. That's why I haven't got tested. But who knows? I mean, maybe we do have it. We really have no idea. It's like a silent disease. It's really scary. It's freaking scary, man. Honestly, like I try to take all the precautions I can, but I still want to live a somewhat normal life. But it's like life has changed so much. To me, this is like this has been a really crappy summer. Like it's just been every day, like I said, is just completely up in the air, and you really have no idea. Now, let's get some comments here. CIA ran too. How's it going, man? Good morning. Luck of the Irish. Rest in peace, Habib's dad. True warrior. I'm Irish. Let Habib rest. I don't want to see him emotional cage to be lost. I'd cry too. Yeah, he won't be fighting this year. There's no way. Like, there are fighters that have fought after their family members have passed away. I remember Jake Shields fought Jake Ellenberger like 2011.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
Dude, he got knocked out in brutal fashion, like a week after his dad died, and everyone was like, "Why do you fight?" But I think his name's Jack Shields, if I'm not mistaken, and his father obviously meant a lot to him. But it's crazy, right? Like as a fan, what fans are harsh though in the sport, man. A guy, your dad or mom could die, and people would be like, "You should be fighting right now." Like my grandma died last year, and I was still devastated, man. Like it carries you stays with you a long time, John. It doesn't just go away. Especially for Habib and the bond you have with your father, right? Like they were close. It's not like they were, separated. They were like together all the time. They probably lived together. I'm not 100% sure about that. If I had to guess, I'm guessing Habib has some huge house in Russia, and he deserves it, John. As far as that 16.5 million, he deserves every penny. These guys all deserve to be paid more money, but I don't want to do fighter pay right now because I talk about it every podcast. I get really upset about it. Let's get to some other comments here. Eddie D, nice McGregor gets gifted another title shot. Dude, it's very possible. Very, very possible. CIA ran too. Conor Justin would be a banger. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a dream fight. Having said that, I really want to see this Gaethje Habib fight at some point. I was actually thinking about, John, to be honest, I think Gaethje's got a really good chance to win if the fight happens, just based on the style matchup. But the Conor fight, that would be a great fight too. Two strikers going at it. I kind of favor Justin Gaethje there too, based on his last performance. The way he systematically destructed Tony Ferguson, that was ridiculous. He looked so good. So any brief thoughts on that possible matchup between Conor and Justin?
Yeah, I think Justin goes in as the favorite, no doubt. I mean, he's hit another gear. He's hit another level in his skills that we are just starting to see. And we haven't even seen the peak of it yet. And maybe we'll be able to see it against McGregor, and he'll destroy McGregor. You know what I mean? Like he just looks so crisp on his feet, and his hands are just so fast. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It seems like Justin just has more tools on the feet, which is crazy to say compared to what Conor has, because Conor has that laser left hand, but then he has the kicks too. But that's pretty much it. You know what I mean? He has the uppercut. But I don't know. Gaethje, it's like if he does take on McGregor, I feel like he'll show more of his striking in that matchup. And I like him in that fight a lot.
And just the overall package of Justin Gaethje, like the kicks, the elbows, the knees, the punches. Like Conor's mostly just punches. He does have the kicks. He obviously knocked out Cerrone with the head kick, but Gaethje's got the wrestling too. He's always got that extra wrestling in his tool bag. He never uses it, John. Doesn't have to. I think he's learned a lot from those fights with Poirier and Alvarez. And by the way, those were two really close fights that he lost by knockout, but they were both amazing fights. I think he fights differently now. He's a lot smarter when he fights. He's a lot more technical. The last fight, obviously, beating Tony Ferguson the way he did, I'm with you. I think he enters that fight as a favorite if it does happen. CIA ran too. Khabib was lucky to have such a legend of a father, 100%, man. And, honestly, when you hear this kind of thing, I just want to go hug my own dad. You know what I mean? It's just like, life's so short, dude. Seriously. My dad's the same age as Abdulmanap, so it scares me, dude. Like my dad goes to work every day, right? And like it always worries me, John, that he might get it from some idiot who is sick and doesn't tell anyone. It freaks me out sometimes. Saeed Mutafate, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Thank you to Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov for raising your son the way you did. Rest in peace, brother. Nice message there. Amora Osasur Abdulmanap, may you rest in peace. Johnny Bony Bones. Will the loss affect Habib's performance? I mean, for sure. And Saeed says, Johnny, when my dad died, it sucks your soul away for a long time. And Sierra Rain agrees. It affects the sport, and he's right. And as far as, I mean, that's a no-brainer, I think. 100% is going to affect him. Like Khabib, I will say this, Khabib's a very mentally strong guy. Not to mention physically strong, John, but mentally, I think he's a very strong individual. But there are some things that are just anyone will be affected by. And I think his father passing away clearly will, because they had such a tight bond and such a close relationship. So I'm assuming you feel the same way about that.
Yeah, it's he is mentally at another level too, but this can crush any person. You could be the most mentally strong person in the world, but you lose somebody close to you, it's gonna affect you deep inside, man. And it might last for, like you said, it could last for years.
Yeah, no, it could for sure. If anyone wants to throw any last commenter, well, Abdulmanap, throw him in there. But I do want to move on to some other news here. So let's get to Colby Covington. He's back in the news this week. He did an interview with BJ Penn, Kinch over there at BJ Penn, so that's pretty good. Check it out if you can. He wants Jorge Masvidal still, man. I still feel like this fight makes a lot of sense too. Both guys don't have fights right now. I'd like to see Colby in the cage soon. There's so much bad blood between these guys. A lot of people were saying Colby versus Woodley. I don't know about that fight. And I think it would have been a good fight like last year. I don't know anymore because after Woodley's last two performances, I'm not really buying him as a legitimate contender anymore. I think Covington would destroy Woodley if they fight. I feel like Covington versus Masvidal is a much more competitive fight at this point. Having said that, as much as I'd like to see that fight, I don't know if Masvidal bites on him, man. I think he's going to probably wait a little bit longer, maybe get a slightly better contract, and take on the winner of Usman and Burns. I love what Masvidal is doing as far as holding out and kind of being that guy saying, you know what, I want to get paid more, and all the fighters deserve to get paid more. But unfortunately, John, it's a very selfish sport. And as soon as he did that, Gilbert Burns is like, I'll take the spot. There's always someone behind you that's going to take the spot. So, unless these guys unionize, you're going to see that in the future too. Anyways, as far as Masvidal goes, it seems like he's he's been saying in media interviews lately that he's like he's going to return again this year. So I feel like almost he's had second thoughts about this, saying, you know what, I probably should have taken that contract they offered me, even though I'm not sticking to my guns. Just because the truth is, John, the nature of the sport is the fighters are going to always be underpaid unless they unionize, and unfortunately, it's basically whatever the UFC offers you have to take. So, give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I like this fight. I think the bad blood part draws me in more than anything. They're ranked close to each other. Actually, Masvidal has been sitting out longer than Colby. Colby's ready to go, and Masvidal looks like he's been training every day at ATT. I'm just wondering about who Colby's training with. You don't hear anything about that, right? Did he put a team together? Who's on his team? Who's coaching him? I don't know what's going on with that. Is he even ready to fight? That's a big question. He's out in the media talking all kinds of wild, putting, what is it? What did he say? Winner takes all. We've heard that in the sport before. That's just they're just bows. They're just talking trash. It's just, that's never gonna happen. But it sounds good, and I like this fight for him next. Masvidal. Yeah, I think he did make a mistake by, passing up this title shot. It's, I remember I was talking to Dan Hooker, and we were talking about fighters that passed up title shots, and there's only been two in the history of the UFC. Hatsu Hioki, when he was supposed to be like the number one bantamweight in the world, or featherweight in the world.
Aldo back in the day. I thought he was the guy that was going to beat Aldo, honestly. Yeah. And who was the other?
And it was Masvidal, right?
Yeah.
And we were just talking about that, and I was just like, yeah, that is pretty wild how things could work out. Could Masvidal missed his chance, at being a real champion in the UFC? We'll find out. But in the meantime, I would like to see him fight Colby. But I feel like the UFC, they're gonna wait until Burns and Usman fight, and then they're gonna figure out like who's next.
Yeah, for sure. I still feel like Masvidal probably is gonna be the next guy in line. I think you'll get a slightly better deal. It's just really unfortunate. I talked about this yesterday with James Lynch when I was on his show. It's so unfortunate that these guys are banding together now. Like during a global pandemic where the economy is in shambles, now is not the right time to band together. I mean, they've had years to unionize. They've had a few years ago, remember Bjorn Rebney led that thing with like TJ Dillashaw and GSP and those guys. What happened to that, right? Like all of a sudden that disappeared. Otherwise, Rebney was the guy, the biggest scumbag in the game. He was the guy. But I mean, like I feel like they've had so many opportunities. After this is over, hopefully in a year, maybe. I mean, who knows how long this lasts? I have no idea. But when it gets back to normal, I mean, that'd be the right time to unionize. But when Jones and Masvidal, as much as I respect what they're doing, I mean, you gotta respect these guys are sticking their guns and holding out. Especially Jones, being probably the best fighter in the game. at the same time, John, I feel like UFC is going to be like, okay, you don't want it, we'll move on to the next guy. Dana White's already said that. He says that every week. He's like, I'm looking for guys who want to fight. I want guys that are hungry and they want to fight. These guys are retired. I don't really care about them. Like, the UFC chews you up and spits you out, John. They use you, you know? And you know what? You get something out of it too. You get your career and you get your fame and you get some money. But the UFC is the one usually making out like bandits when it comes to the fighters. So that's unfortunate Masvidal didn't take the fight. It really is. I feel like, that fight was going to be amazing. But I feel like all the momentum for that fight is gone now too at the same time. So we'll see what happens. After this fight next week, it's only a week away. I can't wait for that card, by the way. The card's going to be amazing. After that fight, you're right. I think they'll figure out the rest of the division, like with Woodley and Covington and all these guys. So great division, though. I love it. By the way, Leon Edwards, we didn't mention him. He's got 8 wins in a row. Leon Edwards is an absolute stud. And honestly, he should probably be fighting for the belt right now. But coronavirus travel limitations, John. I think they did contact him about the fight before they turned over Burns. Although I'm fine with Burns getting the shot. Burns is the number one guy. He deserves it too. But it's really unfortunate that Masvidal did turn it down because that would have been a good fight. A couple of comments here. Omoro Osas, it might affect Khabib's performance. Also may strengthen it, potentially. But again, I don't think he's going to fight for a while. And he says, today's not about his performance. It's about whose dad was in a general and generous man. 100%, me and John are trying to be respectful here, talking about potential, ramifications of this fight. We are journalists. We got to talk about that stuff. But of course, our hearts and prayers are with the Nurmagomedov family. All right, next thing I'm going to talk about Dustin Poirier. He did an interview with Ariel and just talk about the damage he's been taking in his fights, John. And it was definitely eye-opening. Basically said that, he loves the sport so much. He doesn't want the love for the sport to kill him because of these wars he's in. Because that last fight, man, you think it's fight of the year? Would you still have Zhang and Joanna at number 1, or do you think this has surpassed it, by the way?
I would, just off, brutality, I would pick Zhang and Joanna. You know what I mean? But Dan Hooker versus Dustin Poirier was a very close second. Yeah. But then you got what was the other fight? Then you got Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson too. That was a brutal fight.
Yeah, Dan Hooker versus Paul Felder. That fight was amazing too. And then you also had Josh Emmett against Shane Burgos. And Josh Emmett, man, guy blew his knees out. Now he's training to get better. That was a crazy fight. The only difference, that fight was only 3 rounds. The other fights were all 5 rounds. I think that almost hurt it a little bit. But yeah, Dustin Poirier, man, John, he's going to go in the Hall of Fame one day. You look at his resume, Dan Hooker, Max Holloway, Eddie Alvarez, Justin Gaethje, Anthony Pettis, Jim Miller, and on and on. This guy's incredible, man.
Yeah, he is. And going back to what you said about the damage, if you look at his last 6, 7, 8 fights, it's all been wars, especially the ones he's won. Yeah. Every fight that he's won, they've been wars, right? So it seems like if he wants to win, he has to get into these wars to get to this deep darkness down inside of him to pull it out, and win the fights. You know what I mean? Because when he loses, he gets taken out pretty dominantly, like the Khabib fight, or even the Michael. I think before that was the Michael Johnson fight, right? And those are the 2 last losses that he's had, and that was Michael Johnson was a first round knockout, and Khabib, he was just dominant throughout that whole fight. But yeah, it's just Dustin Poirier, of course. First ballot Hall of Fame. He's gonna go down as a legend. You know what I mean? He's won a title, even though it's an interim, it's still a title. And I still feel like he still has a chance to actually probably win the undisputed title if he slides in at the perfect moment. You know what I mean? He says that he's gonna be more strategic with what he does moving forward, and maybe the UFC might reward him, man, for all the wars he's been through, and give him that Gaethje fight if Khabib steps away.
Dude, James said that yesterday in the podcast, and I agree with you guys. I wasn't even thinking that, but yeah, Gaethje right now definitely could be fighting for the belt against someone if Khabib doesn't fight. You could definitely see a rematch. And Dustin Poirier won the first fight. I did pick Gaethje the first time, and he obviously lost, but I still feel like I'd pick him again just because he hasn't been taking damage in the last few fights. And Dustin Poirier, like you said, John, you're right. Look at these fights. The Hooker fight, obviously, we just saw it, but the Max Holloway fight was a war. Gaethje fight was a crazy war. The Pettis fight was nuts. The Jim Miller fight actually took a lot of damage in that fight.
It was.
Those leg kicks, the low kicks, calf kicks. So, man, the guy's a stud. I'm looking at his record in the UFC, 18-5-1 no contest. So that's an incredible record, man. For a guy who's only, I think he's 31. He's 31. He's actually 1 year younger than me, which is crazy. Because I remember when this guy was coming up, and he was in the WEC, lost to Danny Castillo in his debut. And I wasn't thinking much about him, but he had that performance against Josh Grisby, who's a terrible person, by the way. Guy like choked his dog out. Guy's a terrible human being. He beat him at UFC 125. He went on a nice string, and I remember when he fought Holloway, but he had some setbacks, like you said, to obviously Johnson and McGregor too. But even at featherweight, the Jung fight, the Swanson fight, but the guy's an absolute stud, man. Absolutely love Dustin Poirier. My level of respect for this guy's really gone through the roof, though. Like after this last fight, and hearing what he's did with the Good Fight Foundation, man. Like the guy's a great guy too. Like this is the guy you want, like representing the sport. He's really a nice guy. Like I think he's helping charities. He helps people, get food in their mouths. John, I mean, during a time like this, like you love that. And I saw his salary, $300,000. It's low. It's really low in my opinion. This guy should be making $1 million a fight, man. At least. People are going to say, oh, well, maybe there's money behind the scenes. There might be, but this wasn't a pay-per-view. They don't get TV revenue. It's not like the NBA where they split it half and half. You'd hope the UFC slipped them some extra money for that fight. I mean, he obviously got the bonus. So he got 350 plus his Reebok money. But, John, this is a guy who should be making 7 figures a fight.
Yeah. Well, his coach said, his next fight, he should get $1 million payday, and I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like the UFC is giving these bonuses in the locker room anymore. That was more of like the Fertitta brothers doing it and rewarding the fighters. It's all run by a corporation now. They're not doing that anymore.
Dude, 100%. People forget that. Like, it was the Fertittas that were doing that. They would slip him an envelope. I remember one time I interviewed Tim Boach after he knocked out Yushin Okami in Japan, and he said they slipped him a $20,000 check after the fight, like that no one knew about, right? So they just gave him a check. They don't do that anymore, I don't think, John. Maybe sometimes, like, I know that, remember Conor, when he knocked out Cerrone, there was a photo taken of Dana White, but who was in that picture? Lorenzo Fertitta. And they're like, here's a little extra bonus money. It wasn't the new guys from Endeavor. Those guys, they run it like a corporation, like a business, dude. They're not giving away money on the side. So I just hope that when these fighters do band together, they get 50-50 on the revenue split for the TV money. The TV money, the UFC's getting everything. The Reebok money, they're getting more than half of it too. It's disgusting. Just going to get to this comment. CIA Rand says, choked his dog. Josh Grisby is a terrible guy. He did put his dog into a rear naked choke and choked the dog out on routinely too. Not even just once. Like he did it on the regular. The guy's a terrible person, seriously. I think he might be in jail still. He might have got out though. Andre says, who do you want to see Leon Edwards fight next? That's a great question. It's tough because this division is just so ridiculous right now because basically we had to wait. We've been to fight for 6 months, which was fair after that fight with Covington. But we'll see what happens with these two. But, you look at the rest of those guys. He still could fight Woodley, I guess. Stephen Thompson's the guy you could fight. But, if you're Edwards, you have 8 wins in a row. You probably want that title shot next. I think you'll probably have to fight once more. What do you think? Who's he going to fight next?
Yeah, he's going to have to fight once more. And I'm thinking Jorge Masvidal is rooting for Usman to win because I feel like stylistically, not Usman. He's rooting for Burns to win because stylistically, if he wants to chase after that title and win it, Burns would be a great stylistic matchup for Jorge Masvidal because I think Burns will stand with him. You know what I mean, and try to trade more than go to the ground. Rather, Usman would not probably do that. He'd probably wrestle him like he did with Woodley. So. But if I was the UFC, I would just put Edwards against Masvidal. You know what I mean? And just do it like the next Fight Island. Why not? You know what I mean? Why not? It could be a main event.
Oh, 100% be a main event. That'd be a great fight. I'd love to see that fight. But again, if they do Covington versus Masvidal, then Edwards again is the odd guy out. It's like he's one of these guys that no one wants to fight because he's so good, but he doesn't have a huge name. He's not a huge superstar by any means, but everyone knows how good this guy is. He's super dangerous. Got a couple comments here quickly. We'll get to. Andre says Tony's cleared to train in 7 days. Yeah, he'll be back soon. I think Tony will turn around quick. I don't think he'll sit out that long. He had a long layoff the last time from the Cerrone fight until the fight with Gaethje, like almost a year. I think he'll want to fight again probably September, October, if I had to guess. And again, actually, I mean, he's right there too, though. Like you could easily see Tony fighting once more, winning a fight, and then getting a title shot again because I think he kind of got screwed out of the one the last time with Khabib falling out and then the style changing. I mean, it's a completely different fight, John. Khabib to Justin Gaethje. You're training for a grappling heavy fight, and then you go to a pure striker in the next fight. Very tough. Amoro says, let's not forget Khabib opened a martial arts school in Dagestan for the youth, the kids, or his father, I should say. That's great. Marcus Williams, any news on Jeff Neal and Ryan Hall? So Jeff Neal, no. Ryan Hall, yes. We'll talk about that a little bit later because I got a bunch of fight announcements I want to get to, but I just want to talk about a little bit more news, and then we'll get to the fight announcements. Dan Hooker, obviously a guy that you're well aware of. Such a great fight. You know what? This guy is so much better than I ever thought he'd be. Like, I remember when he knocked out Hioki, and I was like, okay, this he's good. but then he had those losses too, and you're like, okay, his chin's not that good, and maybe he's not that great. Moves up to lightweight, John. Lightweight's a different guy. I mean, a completely different fighter, and how the hell did this guy make 145? So big. He's so big and strong. I love Dan Hooker. He's so good. The last fight was amazing. The string of wins he had. I mean, this is a guy who knocked out Gilbert Burns 2 years ago. He's incredible. So he's saying now he wants to fight either Ferguson or Charles Oliveira next. Imagine he has another fight with Ferguson that has a third fight of the year, Ken. I mean, this guy, he's incredible. So give me your thoughts on what's next for Dan Hooker.
First of all, man, Dan Hooker is one of the best guys to interview ever. He's, everything he says is so well thought out, and it's almost like he's prepared for the questions that you have, and I love it, man, because he just brings fire every time. But going to Dan Hooker and his options, he said like Oliveira or Ferguson. I like the Ferguson fight. And both of those guys are coming off losses and coming off massive wars, and I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon. It'll probably happen towards the end of the year, probably like November or whatever month Fight Island will be. I think that's when they're going to do it. Oliveira, I like him to go against Poirier if Poirier doesn't slide in and get the title shot next. Because when you take Khabib out of the lightweight division, dude, it's crazy. Like the matchups that you can have. Because Khabib's not, holding the title. And so you got all these guys all these moving pieces that could fight each other at any time. And you could make matchups like, instantly. So yeah, I like Dan Hooker to take on Ferguson in like November or whatever, and then Oliveira take on Poirier if Poirier doesn't slide in for the title shot. And Oliveira, another guy that you thought he was dead in the water too. Not dead in the water, but you didn't think he was gonna end up doing what he's doing now. He's like 8 in a row, finished 8 guys, and he's just killing the division, and no one's giving him anything. And in some ways, it's like you need to learn English. I always tell like Asian fighters, and if you want to be big, you got to learn English. You got to be able to do media. You got to be able to do interviews. And I think part of Khabib being as big as he is because he did learn English, and he spent that time doing that. And there's a couple other fighters too that have done it throughout the years. And that's why I think Jose Aldo too. He's the reason why he's not as big is because he didn't learn English, right? So, but he's one of the greatest of all time, man. It just shows you that there's a whole promotion side of it, like media side of it, that you need to be a part of to like create this push for you to get the big fights. And Oliveira doesn't have that yet, but for us who watch the sport, we know that he should get a big fight like Poirier.
100%. I was actually looking at his resume yesterday. It's really impressive, Charles Oliveira. He does have a lot of losses, to be fair. However, most of those losses were at 145. At 155, he's just really a different guy. He's got the one loss to Paul Felder. I still feel like that'd be a good rematch to make at some point. I don't think Felder would take that fight. It seems like Felder wants a big fight. And you know what? He's at the end of his road, I think, with his career, John. As much as I want to keep seeing Paul Felder fight, he's got the UFC gig now. I think you'll probably see Paul Felder fight once or twice more. Maybe just one more time, actually. I think he's got his kind of future set up. I don't see him taking this fight. He's already beat Charles Oliveira. There's a lot of downside here, not much upside. You beat Oliveira, it's like, okay, you already beat him. So where does it go from here? I think Felder probably wants that Hooker rematch. That's a fight they could do, by the way. We talk about potential opponents for Dan Hooker. That's one fight. But yeah, do Bronx. 7 straight wins, all by stoppage. I mean, this guy finishes everyone. And not only is he submitting guys, he's also knocking them out now. So he's incredible. You look at his resume, John, 29, 8-1. So he's got almost 40 fights. He's only 30 years old. He's only 30. And he's been in the UFC for 10 years now. 29 wins, 27 by stoppage, including 19 by submission. So he also has the most finishes by submission in UFC history. He's only 30. Royce Gracie is going to have to bite his dust at this point, because this guy, by the time he's done, he might have 20, 25 wins by submission. So he's incredible.
Look at all the Hall of Famers right there in the lightweight division right now.
I've been looking at the record book lately, the UFC record book, just looking at most wins and stuff. There's guys that you wouldn't really say are Hall of Famers, but they could be, because guys like Clay Guida, for instance, he's got 20 wins. He's a guy that I don't look at him as a Hall of Famer, but if he ends up in the top 5, Neil Magny, another guy, Neil Magny might end up as the most winning welterweight ever, more than GSP. Is he a Hall of Famer? Not on paper, but if he has the most wins in the divisions, how do you not keep him in there? So I'm with you, man. It's crazy. Guys like Oliveira, Jim Miller, all these guys that I think they have great resumes. They don't look like Hall of Famers. They haven't won belts. I don't know if winning a title is really what you need anymore. I think if you have that longevity, like a Cerrone, a Damian Maia, these guys to me are Hall of Famers. Diego Sanchez, guys like that. Hit some comments here. Kinshiro says Dan Hooker needs to lead head movement if he doesn't want CT in the future. Also lacks one-hit knockout power, move to 170. I don't know about 170. It looks like he's fighting 155. He's right about the one-punch knockout power lately, I guess, but he did knock out Gilbert Burns with one punch. I think it was a left hook, if I'm not mistaken. So I do think he has knockout power. Head moving for sure. And Dustin Poirier. They didn't move their heads in that fight. You know, as a fan, you love to watch it, but I was like, well, these guys are not defending at all. It's crazy. He says Dan Hooker's a tall, wide guy at 70. He might be taller than even Darren Till until it move up to 185. Hooker could develop one hit KO power. I think he already has it, man. Like I said, the Gilbert Burns fight, but you're right. The last fight with Poirier was more about a volume striking attack. And then he says Oliveira at 155 is a beast, and he won some money when he fought Kevin Lee. Good for you. Let's get to what was the? Oh yeah, here's one from Andre. How about Stipe not wanting to fight in a smaller cage? Can I hear your thoughts on that? Yes, you can. I think the smaller cage definitely favors DC. Everyone's kind of said that now. Just based on the fact that I think he should wrestle in this fight. If he stands and trades with Stipe, I think it's a mistake. I know he knocked him out the first time, but we saw in the last fight that Stipe, if he doesn't get KO, probably has the overall better striking attack, more varied. I think DC is going to go for takedowns. I think the smaller cage does favor him, but I don't know. It's hard to say. This is a crazy fight. I'll be honest. I was wrong about both the other times they fought. I picked Stipe the first time, and then I flipped my pick to DC the second time, and both lost. So don't ask me about this fight, man. I'm the wrong guy to ask. I have no idea who's going to win this fight, John. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the smaller cage though? Because I know Stipe doesn't want it. He wants the big cage. I don't think the UFC is going to change that for him.
Yeah, I don't feel like the UFC is going to change that for him either. They're going to have to fight in a small cage, and that does really favor Cormier because he did come out and say that, you know, in my next fight I'm going to be wrestling, and that's the game plan. He said it in an interview, so that's what we need to expect. And you know, on that small cage, wrestling is going to be key against Miocic. But I think Miocic, he can handle it. I think he can handle the wrestling and be able to withstand DC. Because I think he's strong enough. You know what I mean? I think his wrestling is decent enough, his defensive wrestling to, you know, to stave off DC, you know, in the early attempts at least. But yeah, DC Stipe, him kind of like not wanting the small cage. I can understand that though at the same time, right? But you know, they're not going to budge for Stipe. You know, the UFC, they like DC more than they like Stipe. Come on, let's just be real.
They love him, you know. And he's good. I mean, Stipe, he's one of those guys that could eventually supplant Dana White as the face of the company, possibly in the future. I mean, Dana White won't do it forever. I think he'll do it as long as he can, but who knows? I mean, DC's a great guy. He's a great guy, man. He really is. I met him in person. He was awesome and great champion for the sport and everything, but they definitely are biased towards DC. They definitely, I think, are favoring him a little bit by putting the fight in the smaller cage. Having said that, it's at the Apex, so that's what it is. It's a small cage there, man. We all know that, so it's not surprising. But actually, quickly on the small cage, I think they got to stick with it going forward. I think the fights are better, more action, more finishes. Like, what's the downside? What do you think?
Nothing. There is no downside. We saw some of the greatest fights in the past 5 years in that Apex. You know what I mean, with no crowd. And I loved it so much because you get to hear everything. I love that aspect of it. Yeah. Being able to hear all the like strikes. Hey, the end of the second round with Hooker and Poirier, where you hear Dan Hooker just landing those punches, just the snaps of it. It was just like, I don't know. It's like if you wanted to be turn a person into a fan, these are the events that you would let them watch, man. Those are the fights you want them to watch, right?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. Honestly, though, I do prefer a crowd. I think any sport, I think, is better with the crowd. But I'm with you, man. It's definitely been different, and I think it's a good switch up for now. But I'm looking forward. Like, imagine that fight, and I know what you're saying you can hear the strikes, but imagine that fight with the crowd. Like, that'd be pretty great. Yeah. Right? A couple other pieces of news here, and then we'll get some fight announcements. Alistair Overeem, he's talking about making one more title run at age 40. It's quite crazy because, you know, you look at Overeem, and he's still one of the top guys in the game, but he is 40. He's been knocked out like 15 times, I think. I love Overeem. He's a legend. He'll be in another guy, Hall of Fame, not a champion, but a Hall of Famer one day. I just feel like the chin's going to always hold him back. What do you think?
I don't know. Like, after he got knocked out by Jairzinho, you know, when I was in UFC Busan, he was the guest fighter, and he came in, I think it was like a week later, and he had his lip all stitched up. It barely you could tell. And he was speaking coherently. Like, he seems like he's 20 years old when he talks, man. He's very articulate when he does interviews. You know, I don't really see the damage kind of, you know, it's kind of like the Diego Sanchez thing. Like, you don't really see it. Well, I guess you see it nowadays with Diego Sanchez, but for Alistair, you don't see it like the knockouts being a huge effect in his, on his brain or anything like that. So I don't know. I love the idea that he still wants to chase the title, man. Why would you even stick around just to fight?
Yeah.
He's already, he's rich. He probably makes money. He probably has businesses. He's not he's a smart guy. So, yeah, chasing the title, we need more contenders. We need more guys with names in that division. And why not have Alistair there to kind of fight the guys, be the gatekeeper. But if you win, you kind of jump outside of the gatekeeper role and chase after that title. I like that aspect of Overeem.
Me too. And looking at the rankings for the heavyweight division right now, Alistair Overeem is ranked number 7 in the world. Jairzinho is ranked number 6. That's the guy right above him. I think the rematch is fine. I'm okay with it if they want to do it. I know, obviously, Jairzinho's coming off a loss, Overeem off a win, but he's the only guy that's available right now because you had Stipe and DC. I guess maybe if Stipe loses, they could do the rematch with him too. Nagano will get the next title shot. And also, I don't really want to see the rematch between Nagano and Overeem. I don't see that going too well for the Reem. Curtis Blades is his teammate. They won't fight again. They've already fought and Blades won. Derek Lewis, have they fought? I don't think they fought.
I like that fight.
Me too, but Derek, again, he's fighting Oleinik, and I don't know why they booked that fight. Like, I don't understand what they were in such a rush to do it for, especially when you had Blades available too. Blades versus Lewis would have made a lot more sense in my opinion. Then you could have did, that fight makes sense. Also, JDS is out there, but I think JDS has a fight coming up too, right?
Yeah, Rosenstrike.
Oh, okay, he's fighting Rosenstrike. Okay, well, you know what? I would say maybe the winner of Rosenstrike and JDS fights Overeem, actually. Both rematches. JDS knocked him out the first time. Rosenstrike knocked him out. Oh, hey, if Overeem wants to go on a run, he's got to beat one of these guys to get to that title shot. But yeah, I was impressed by his last fight, man. Getting knocked down early by Walt Harris, coming back and then knocking Walt Harris on there. Yeah. Walt Harris, it's a great kind of in similar ways to Khabib. You look at the time he took off. He took off, I think, 6 months or maybe more, 7 months, I guess. But you saw he even admitted like he wasn't the same guy in the cage that night. He had other things on his mind. Lyman Good's father just passed away too. He fought a week later though. I forgot to talk about him earlier. And he said after the fight, he's like, my heart was not in the cage. My heart was with my father. So, these guys are in a different spot than Khabib. Lyman Good probably makes I think he makes like 30 and 30 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like Khabib's making millions, right? So they're in a different spot financially. These guys unfortunately have to fight. Even if they have personal tragedy, they have to fight. I think Khabib's in a different spot. Last piece of news here I want to get to quickly. Alexandre Pantoja, he'll be the backup fighter for Davison Figueiredo and Joseph Benavidez too. He's supposed to fight Askar Askarov on the same card. So I love the idea of having that backup fighter. I think they always should do that for title fights. Like there's been title fights in the past that we've seen canceled because they didn't have a backup and a guy missed weight. So I think it's a good idea. Pantoja is a very good fighter. He's coming off a win, I think, over Matt Schnell in his last fight. He had the fight with Figueiredo last year. He lost, but it was like a fight of the year candidate. So I'm okay with him being the next guy in line for the belt in case there is maybe a weight mishap for Figueiredo again, because we saw what happened the first time. Thoughts on him filling in?
Yeah, I don't mind it too much. I mean, like he is coming off that win against Matt Schnell. It's very impressive. Yeah. And I like the idea of having the backups. And I think moving forward, every title fight, under the circumstances, should have a backup. I don't understand why there's no backups for next week's title fights. There's none. So if one fighter falls out, that fight is over unless someone flies in on 72-hour notice to take the title fight, and that would be kind of interesting to see if that actually happens. But I feel like they should, Francis Ngannou, he's the backup, right, for Stipe, DC.
Yes.
Yeah. So it seems like they're putting that into place moving forward, and I like it. I love it. But it kind of puts Brandon Moreno, like he's kind of like out in the cold, right? He's been tearing it up recently too. And I felt like he should have, maybe been the backup.
Same thing. I thought the same thing. And then I looked at his record, and Pantoja's beat him twice. He beat him on fair, and he beat him on in the UFC. So I'm assuming that's why they are choosing Pantoja over him as a potential backup. But we'll see what happens. I mean, hopefully it doesn't even come to that. Hopefully Figueiredo actually makes weight this time. I know last time there was rumors he was eating a lot of pizza, but I don't know if that's true or not. But yeah, I mean, I love Figueiredo, man, but you got to make weight, and it was disappointing when he missed weight. We'll see what happens there. Okay, let's get to some fight announcements here. Marcus earlier asked about Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall's been booked to fight Ricardo Lamas in August 29th, I think. This is actually rebooking, supposed to take place in Oklahoma City. I love the matchup. Ryan Hall is a guy that super dangerous. He has a hard time getting fights because his ranking is low, but everyone knows how dangerous he is. His ground game is lethal. We saw what he did to BJ Penn. And you look at his resume, it's pretty good. 4 fights in the UFC. He beat Artem Lobov to win the show. Then he beat Gray Maynard in his first fight. And then he beat, obviously, the last 2 fights, he had the wins over oh my gosh, I just completely lost my train of thought here. Darren Elkins and BJ Penn. So I mean, that's a pretty solid resume for 4 fights. Now he takes on Ricardo Lamas. He's not ranked anymore, but he was a top 15 guy for years. He's a dangerous guy. I feel like you got to favor Ryan Hall in this fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I would favor Ryan Hall in this fight, but I'm not really too big on the Ryan Hall train just yet, because if you really look at it, he beat Artem Lobov. Of course, I know he's the GOAT and everything, but come on, let's be realistic. He's not really not even like a top 25 fighter. Gray Maynard, he's pretty much on his way out at that time. BJ Penn way out the door, and then Derek Elkins. That was a decent win. I could admit that, but I feel like this fight against Lamas, this is going to be the one that proves that he belongs there in the top 15. And if he does, then, if he finishes Lamas, then I feel, he should get somebody with a bigger name. Because there's a lot of guys that want to fight Ryan Hall, because Ryan Hall kind of has built this like this mystique around him, right? A little bit. And they want to take that mystique from him. And I want to see who he has next after this. But Lamas, man, you can't count him out. We haven't seen him in a while, but we still can't count out. He still has good striking, and he could still knock out Ryan Hall.
100%, man. I mean, this is a dangerous guy. He submitted Charles Oliveira, and Oliveira has like the best jiu-jitsu in the game. And Ricardo Lamas tapped him out. He's also got some good wins like Diego Sanchez, Cup Swanson, Darren Elkins too. So he's a solid fighter, man. I like the matchup. Next fight I want to talk about here, Nicolas Dalby. He was supposed to take on Danny Roberts. He's going to actually take on Jesse Ronson now, who's got re-signed to the UFC. And I was really happy to see this. Jesse Ronson's a guy I've seen fight many times in Ontario here. He's a local fighter. He's a guy that's a little bit older now at age 34, but, he's a guy that got screwed in his first UFC run, John, because you look at who he fought. He fought Michel Prazeres, Francisco Trinaldo, and Kevin Lee, and he lost 3 split decisions, and they cut him. And since then, he's won a couple titles in Canada and TKO. He is coming off 2 straight losses, so it's very rare for the UFC to sign a guy coming off a loss, let alone 2 straight losses. He lost to Nikolai Alekashin in his last fight, and Nathan Schulte, who was a great fighter. But to me, those are not bad losses. Those are really good fighters in PFL. So I think UFC made a good decision here, but Nicolas Dalby is a really good fighter too. What do you think about this matchup?
I feel like this matchup is a setup. They're setting Nicolas Dalby up for a good performance. Once Danny Roberts got taken off this card, that's 2 times in a row. They're like, hey, we might as well fill it in with somebody to kind of build Nicolas Dalby. I feel like they're kind of high on Nicolas Dalby. He hasn't lost, right? He hasn't lost. He has 1 fight in the UFC against Charles Oliveira, and that was a pretty good fight.
I mean, he had a prior stint in the UFC, and he had a couple losses the first time. But you're right. Since his comeback, he only lost the 1 time. He's solid, man, for sure. I think Ronson, this is a tough fight for him, especially on short notice. But I'm just happy for this guy to get another shot because, again, you look at those 3 losses, that's a tough run, man. Next fight, Marcin Tybura will be taking on Maxim Grishin. Grishin's filling in for this guy Romanov, I think his name is. I think Marcel actually broke this news. Maxim Grishin, I wonder if he's fought in Korea before. He might have. I know he's fought in M1 many times. Any thoughts on this matchup? Marcin Tybura coming off a win in his last fight over Spivak. What do you think of this fight?
Man, this is a very confusing fight to me. It's like, man, like you said, Marcin Tybura, he was a guy that was ranked, and then he's actually on his way back up, and they put him against this Maxim. Is this his debut?
It's his UFC debut. He's just coming over from PFL. He actually was unbeaten in PFL. He had a couple of draws, but this is a pretty good fighter, man. You look at his resume, he has some good wins. He actually has a win over Alexander Volkov by submission. So I think this is a good signing for the UFC. He is 36 years old, so he's a little older, obviously, but he does have a nice win streak here. He's actually undefeated over his last 10 fights. That's pretty solid, man. I mean, that's a good signing. And I'll be honest, like, these guys in PFL right now, you got to feel bad for them, man. They're not going to fight till next year. So I feel like the UFC's probably like, or the PFL's like, we're going to release these guys and let them fight if they want in the UFC. Jesse Ronson, too. So another guy that has been released and he'll fight in the UFC. So happy about that for sure. A couple other matchups here. Ovince St.Preux against Shamil Gamzatov. Shamil, he had to fight Klitsina Bryu, I think his name was, in Russia. And OSP, it's weird seeing him fight at heavyweight. What do you think about that, his heavyweight debut against Ben Rothwell? It's so strange, right?
Yeah, it's one of the strangest things that I've ever seen, and it's not working out well for these light heavyweights moving up to to heavyweight, right? We saw what last week. What was his name? Yeah, that was he looked like Roy Nelson, right? Just if Roy Nelson cut his hair, and kind of
I know.
performed like him too.
Yeah, he didn't look very good. He looked like an MMA journalist or something like that. Didn't look like a professional fighter. Just getting through some other fights. Paul Craig versus Gadzhimurad Antigulov is announced. Jack Shore versus Dos Santos. That's not going to happen. How about this one? Tyson Nam against Machin. I like that fight, dude. Tyson Nam, his last knockout. Wow, that was an amazing knockout. I'm pretty excited about his next fight with Machin. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, that was one of the scariest knockouts I've ever seen for a flyweight fight. Do
Oh
you
yeah,
agree, man? You haven't seen something like that in a while.
100%, dude. It's so rare for flyweights to get knocked out with one punch. I think about Benavidez versus Demetrius Johnson another time, but it's super rare. Yeah, that was a good knockout. I actually just rewatched that fight the other day. I'm like, holy smokes, that was nice. How about this fight? Francisco Trinaldo against Jay Herbert. Herbert's a guy that's highly touted prospect. Trinaldo's a veteran. Any thoughts on that matchup?
That's a tough debut in the
I
UFC
know.
right there. Like nobody wants to fight Francisco Trinaldo, man. That guy, he comes and bangs hard and he wins fights, man. And for a guy like Jay Herbert, I think Jay Herbert, if he could get past Francisco Trinaldo in his debut, it's gonna say a lot about what he can do in that division.
Yeah, this guy is pretty good. 10-1 record, 32 years old. He's a Cage Warriors champ. He's on a 6-fight win streak, but almost all those wins are by stoppage. But I mean, this is a big step up, man. Trinaldo's a solid fighter. He is 41 though, so he might be the oldest guy in this division right now at lightweight. But how is this guy 41? You look at his physique, man. It's impressive. Dude. It's like Mike Perry-esque. So this is a guy who's been around for a while. He's got some good wins. Paul Felder, Jim Miller, Evan Dunham, Bobby Green. Got some good wins. So he's a solid fighter. Tough debut. What about this fight? Angela Hill against Michelle Waterson. Any thoughts on that one?
I love that fight. That's a great fight. Michelle Waterson, she's coming off 2 straight losses. The last one against Carla Esparza, kind of controversial right there. But she lost. It's a loss on her record, so she needs to come back and fight somebody that has some momentum, which is Angela Hill. She does have some momentum, even though she's coming off a loss too. But that's also a controversial loss. So you got two girls coming off controversial losses, fighting each other to kind of cement their feet in that division a little bit, and whoever wins this will most likely get a decent name. So it's a big fight for both of them.
I agree. You know what? Honestly, I think Angela Hill has a really good chance to win this fight. I like Michelle Waterson a lot, but she's definitely on the downside of her career. She's 34 years old now. But man, she's great. And by the way, I saw her in Brazil last year when I was at UFC 237. She was the guest fighter there. I'm like, this is a fighter. Like, she looks like a supermodel, dude. Seriously, like she's someone I think the UFC could market like as a presenter host down the road as well. She's great and a great fighter too. All right, John. I think that's it, man. I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, man, that covers it, man. I'm just excited for next week, man. Like, UFC 251 on Fight Island is like history in the making. Did you hear anything about like media actually going out there? Because I heard that fighters, they're not even able to take, like, if you're not in the corner, you're not able to fly into Fight Island. You have to be part of the corner. If you're in the corner, you could be there. Have you heard anything about that?
Like a month ago, I got an email from UFC saying if you're going to apply for the credentials, they do it now.
Oh yeah, I did get that too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got that.
they sent it to me. I mean, I don't know why, but I'm not going. Obviously, I'm not going to pay to fly to Abu Dhabi on my own time.
Yeah.
I'm not working for a company that wants to send me there at the moment. I'm assuming it's going to be guys like John Morgan and Oscar Willis, like the same guys you see at all the events. The Schmo, I guess, as well. Brett Okamoto. Actually, I don't think Ariel's going. It seems like Ariel's doing a lot of work from home now, which is fine. He's got a young family, but yeah, I'd say those guys are probably going to be the ones going, John. I don't really know if you really need media on site, though. You know, the thing about this sport is you don't really need to be there to cover it, which is the crazy thing about the sport. You know, you can do a lot of it just from home. So obviously, it's great to be there. I love being at fights. I love covering fights. I'd love to do it more often, but I don't know if it's essential. You know, so if they're trying to limit the amount of people going, maybe it's not the right time for them to go. What do you think?
Yeah, if you have a family that you need to go back to, I feel like you should not go. You know,
Yeah.
if you're single and you could return home and be in quarantine for 2 weeks or whatever you need to do to kind of make sure everything's a-okay, then go and cover the sport and have fun and make the contacts and everything. But yeah, if you have a family, I don't think you should be going out there. You know, we just saw, somebody die from, the coronavirus. Why would you even risk that?
I know. I'm with you on that one. All right, man. I think that's it for today's show. John, I really appreciate you coming on, man. It was a lot of fun. I know it's pretty late there in where do you live? Seoul, I guess.
Yeah, just right outside of Seoul.
Right, so it's what? Is it midnight?
Yeah, midnight. Usually, I'm up. You know what I mean? Because I'll from time to time I'll be watching this show when you're doing it, and
Sweet.
the
I
reason
know. I
why because
right
I'm
in.
like editing or something.
I was like, what time is it for him? But I love it, man. I appreciate you coming on. I want to get you on for a while. So plug your stuff, man. Anything you want to say, go ahead.
Yeah, follow me on social media right there on the bottom, JHK MMA, everything, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, go to my YouTube page, Kumite TV or John Hyun Ko, either one. You could type it in, search it, and subscribe. And yeah, and then I got a bunch of interviews coming out this week, and I got a bunch of interviews for 251. I got Peter Yan. I have Volkanovski's coach. I have Peter Yan's coach. I have I forgot. There's a few 251 guys. I just forget who they are because I'm just focused on the next interviews. But yeah, just go check them out and let me know, comment, and yeah, just follow along and I'm just doing my best, man. That's it.
Yeah, just keep grinding, man. You guys can follow me on Twitter at MMAOB. Podcast available at MMAOutbreaker.com and our YouTube channel, iTunes, Spotify, all those places you can get it at. Also check me out at bjpen.com and MMA ratings on that. Guys, I hope you have a great weekend. I know it's July 4th tomorrow, so a big day for Americans. So to any of my American viewers, I hope you guys have a great weekend. We just celebrated Canada Day here, John, a couple days ago. So Wednesday was a fun day for us. But yeah, I just hope everyone has a great weekend. And I'll be back Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. with Cole Shelton to preview UFC 251 Fight Island. I can't wait to talk about that card. It's going to be great. And yeah, to everyone in the chat, Saeed, peace out, man. John, thanks for coming on, man. Talk to you later. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you soon. Bye.